Good afternoon, everybody. This is Filmtastic Panda coming back from the Cannes Film Festival. I just got back yesterday after a long 4 or 5 days I spent there. I had a chance to see movies in the last 3 days of the festival. I caught up with about 11 to 12 movies. And at the end of the festival, I was able to see the latest film from Pixar, Elemental. So, this was the only screening of the movie. It took place in the closing night ceremony and I was lucky enough to be able to attend it and be one of the first people to see it. So I wanted to just give my quick thoughts on here on my channel, and because I know there's a lot of anticipation and excitement about Pixar movies in general, so I wanted to just quickly dilute my thoughts on it. First of all, it's important to note that having seen it as the closing night film at the festival with a ton of buzz around because the festival was coming to an end. The director was obviously there with the voice cast and everybody. It's hard to, take all that out of the equation. It does get you more excited about a film. But after sleeping on it, I think I have a better kind of idea of where I landed on the film and what I thought, generally speaking. And so, just very early on, let me start by saying that I liked this film with a lot of reservations. I think it's definitely a lesser Pixar just based on the very high standard they have set. It's not a return to form in the sense of like an Inside Out or a Coco was. It's more in line with some of the recent projects. So that might be disappointing to hear for a lot of you, but that's kind of where I landed on it. But let me take you through what was impressive about the movie and what maybe it lacked or it kind of lagged behind in. So the first 20 minutes of the movie are actually quite strong. I felt completely immersed in the world they were creating, and they had some incredibly intelligent and creative jokes to make about like the whole element city, like elements interacting in different, like very interesting and funny ways. And I felt really enraptured by that. I thought it was kind of like it's you can probably tell from the trailer it's a little bit of a riff on other things. It's a riff on Zootopia, a riff on Inside Out, but I thought the world building at the beginning was really strong and it really captured the imagination of Pixar's like best films. So that was, I think, the high point for me. The very beginning of the film was extremely strong. So the film follows Ember, the main character. She is a fire person, and she is coping with the fact that the element city that she lives in is not really set up to have fire coexist with the other elements in the city. And this goes back to her parents who immigrated to Element City and find it difficult to set up their life there. So there is a little bit of a divide between fire and the rest of the elements because of the nature of fire that everything they touch kind of burns. And so she feels a little bit isolated, and the entire fire population feels isolated from the rest of Element City. The secondary character in this is Wade. I mean, he plays an important role in the movie, but he's definitely secondary to Ember. And different from Ember, Ember loses her temper all the time. She is very feisty. Wade is very emotional and even a little bit pathetic. He like cries all the time. There's like a running joke about water people crying all the time that comes back in clever ways and also sometimes in like a little bit redundant ways throughout the movie. The film tries to tackle a bunch of different kind of themes that might seem pretty obvious just looking at the trailer. The different elements representing perhaps different ethnicities or races in a kind of like a Zootopia-ish fashion about like prejudice and themes of that sort. And it also has a love story and an immigrant story weaved in together. So there's a lot going on, and I think it's like an hour and 50 minutes long. And the movie I think really struggles towards the back half to weave all these things together in a cohesive way. And this is where I think the movie kind of falls a little bit flat. Some of the messages and themes of the movie are really kind of obvious from very early on, and so going into it, you kind of have already, some expectations of what it might tackle, and you hope it'll do it in perhaps a surprising way. I'm sad to report I wasn't quite surprised with the way that the story unfolded. I thought it was, there was towards the end and like the climactic moments, there is like a clever like little thing that happens. I'm not gonna spoil it, but overall the story plays out in a very predictable fashion, and it doesn't have quite the consistency in kind of awe factor that most Pixar movies have. It has it really strongly in the first 20-30 minutes of the movie, and then it just kind of dies down a little bit for me. It just didn't carry forward that kind of like Finding Nemo, Wally, kind of awe-inspiring, inside-out world building throughout the back half of the movie. It kind of devolves into a typical Pixar kind of emotionally centered movie, but the emotions just aren't quite as strong to provoke a reaction from me and from some members of the audience. Now, some people I was sitting with did really like it. I saw some people in the theater crying. The movie really didn't get to me in that way, and I'm a very easy crier, especially with Pixar movies. Those movies will generally make me cry. So I did feel like the movie, it was unsuccessful in provoking the emotions it was very clearly trying to provoke out of the audience. So, all that said, I do think the movie has some strong elements, like I mentioned. The world building is strong. There are some really, really funny jokes throughout it. And I think some people will be like, when you compare the jokes in this movie to the jokes in Super Mario, it's kind of night and day. I mean, Pixar's team would really went all out when it comes to the actual jokes in the movie. They're laugh out loud funny. But the emotional core of it is just, it's too predictable, it's too soppy, it's too Pixar trying to emulate Pixar of the past. And you can see some of the influences in this movie from the previous Pixar and Disney projects that just kind of take away from anything that was supposed to be original in this later installment. So my final score for Pixar's Elemental is a 6 out of 10. It's a movie that I would recommend to Pixar fans, and I would recommend to people who, love animated movies. Typically speaking, though, I do think adults might have less to connect with in this one. Not because the themes aren't worthwhile or because there's, nothing special to connect with. It's just the execution isn't quite there. I think the screenplay got really, really muddled towards the back half, and it just takes away any of the dramatic kind of tension that might have been built. So it's a 6 out of 10. It's a movie that I liked. But yeah, it's definitely not top tier Pixar, and that's unfortunate. I do think people will like it. So hopefully when it comes out, it gets, it finds a little bit of an audience, but I think it's going to perhaps be a bit of a flop for Pixar, unfortunately. So all that said, when it comes to Oscar chances, I saw some people highlighting the score of this movie as if, they really enjoyed the score. I think it might have been Thomas Newman who composed it. And I really, really do not agree with that. I think the score is like playing up the emotions in a really insincere way. And I just did not like it at all. It wasn't memorable to me at all. I think, yeah, the score was one of the weaker points of the movie, in my opinion. And so I would not consider that for an Oscar nomination personally, especially because the movie has not been getting very high acclaim. As far as an animated feature contender goes for, Academy Awards, I think this movie has a chance of getting in. I would put it kind of on par with Lightyear's, and Lightyear, I mean, in terms of quality, and Lightyear didn't get in, last year or 2 years ago, whenever it came out. And so, I think Elemental is probably sitting at like the fourth or fifth nominee or just outside of the nominees. It's not definitely not going to win it, especially with those early Spider-Verse reactions coming out and the new Miyazaki movie coming out this year as well. I just don't think this is a strong enough Pixar outing to take the Best Animated Feature award. So yeah, I mean, it is at the end of the day a very like standard movie. It does exactly what you expect it to do. It fails in some of the emotional elements, but it really succeeds in the comedic aspects. So hopefully y'all are able to check it out and can give me your thoughts on it as well. If you have any more questions about the movie specifically, feel free to comment them down below. I'll, try to answer anything I can for you guys without spoiling the movie itself. But yeah, that's it for me. So I'll be continuing my Ken coverage in the next few days. I'm gonna go over a lot of the in-competition titles I saw: The Zone of Interest, Anatomy of a Fall, Perfect Days, About Dry Grasses. A lot of great movies coming out of the festival. I'm gonna go through them all in the next few days. So, keep online, keep in touch with my channel, and until next time.